the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I am publisher Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield, and well, we got a match play extravaganza for you. And in the match play between me and Josh, well, it was a tough week for Josh, as I picked both champs, victory lap coming up, and we have to do the math, but it's going to be a beatdown, Josh. That's what I know.
Look, I think we all cared more about the over-under bets anyway for this entire season. No one really cared about the points for our picks, so I'm fine. I'm not crying off air.
We are outfitted today. Hopefully you're checking this out on YouTube. If you haven't already given us a subscribe and a like and a follow and everything on YouTube, please go do it. We're rocking the Diameter Apparel duds today. Thank you so much to Diameter Apparel for the support of the show. We have these beautiful performance polos. I mean, we could be on the course right now rocking these. Pro players starting to wear Diameter Apparel, and you can check it out online. Really nice stuff. I mean, the designs, I have a couple. Josh has a couple. And Josh, I feel like maybe you won the day here with the pink and the blue.
Charlie, when it showed up, I couldn't believe how good it looked. I've actually worn mine to 2 tournaments already.
Wow.
On final day, they wear like an athletic shirt, just like you'd wear to the gym. They're just as comfortable. I've gotten so many compliments on how good the shirt looks, though.
And it's professional. It's classy.
Right. I played in an A tier, had a collared shirt. I didn't win. I didn't do well, but I looked
what?
good.
Look good, feel good, play good.
That's right.
Eventually, the wins will come. They will follow. Right. So anyway, check out Diameter Apparel, and we'll probably do some giveaways pretty soon. So keep an eye out for that as well. We got a surprise later in the show for you. We're going to be doing something fun with match play, but we're going to make you wait to hear that. First, let's talk about this match play championship that happened this weekend in Pennsylvania. Your winners in the match play competition, Paige Pierce and Calvin Heimburg. Paige Pierce taking down Missy Gannon. It went to a playoff. Very exciting. Some awesome performances from both of them all weekend. And Calvin Heimburg beat out Eagle McMahon, who looked unstoppable through the first 3 rounds. But Calvin was just so precise in that final round. We're going to get into everything. I think first and foremost, Josh, what did you think of this event overall? This is the first time we've seen a serious match play tournament on tour.
I was really impressed with the event, the whole energy around it. I think it really brought out an event that we don't typically see in disc golf, and especially in post-produce. I think with the arrival of live coverage, we've seen a little bit more of the personality on course, the interaction between players, and it's something that I've really valued this season. But the match play really felt like it was designed for the fans, for the disc golf experience, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun to watch and an interesting style of golf that we don't get to usually see.
I have to say, we did see a lot of personality in the interviews, which I loved, right? We had the press conferences before. We're going to show you a couple clips, and you can listen to that in just a second from the pre-tournament press conference, which is a lot of fun. And the interviews pre and post round were also good, but it was so serious during the competition. I was surprised at how serious it was. I mean, players were like not really chatty, not really talking trash. I thought we might have more of that kind of like fun vibe, but I just think that when you're talking about top level competitors, when it gets down to be time to actually throw the disc on the course and you're competing for money and you're out on the it didn't feel different to me than any other normal stroke play event.
I think that you did see, and maybe the personality part, that's true. The personality definitely came out prior to the event, but I think what I saw that I really appreciated was the different strategies that came from players that I think was kind of indicative of what we expect of those players to begin with, right? Eagle, and I'll talk a little bit more about him, but that 700-foot shot, insane, right? Like that's a style of golf that Eagle plays. And then you have certain people throwing rollers on like hole 5, for example. I mean, you got to see a little bit of the personality in terms of how the players have always played golf. And I felt like it kind of reinforced some of our ideas about them. And I really appreciated and enjoyed that.
I'd like to make an announcement. I'm personally going to be adopting Eagle style of play, where I too throw 700-foot tee shots and tap in for Eagle. I've been choosing a more conservative style personally, but I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to change over to the Eagle approach to the game. We'll see you at a DGPT event very soon. It was awesome. So real quick, let's take a listen to a couple of the moments from the press conferences before the event.
Yeah, like you said, we're good friends on tour and everything. So, I'm glad he got here early, got some practice rounds, got to see the course because he's just going to go one and done. So I'm gonna beat him. At least I'll get one competitive round out here. Only 12 holes, unfortunately. Maybe I'll give him 8 or 9 holes to see 9 holes of the course. But other than that, we'll see him next week at the Nashville NT.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think you got a lot of confidence, and you're going to be crushed by the end of tomorrow.
Yeah, you just got to hype myself up, and that's kind of hype I need. I like putting pressure on myself, and then executing it on when it matters.
Well, all the pressure's on you. I really wasn't even supposed to make this. I missed it by one spot, and someone dropped out, and I got in. So
yeah, it's got to be a weird feeling coming here by default, not even earning your spot in here. That's got to be a little weird. Just
it is a little weird.
Someone dropped, and you just happened to fall and happen to get in.
It is a little weird, but I feel like I came here to ruin your week.
I'd like to say that Missy has a farther drive than me on this course, but I think I got her. So we'll see who gets the CTP on most of the drives, but I have a feeling that'll be me.
Airball putting, it doesn't really work out here, though.
My heart. Missy hurting all my feelings.
Well, there you have it. A little Ricky Emerson chatter. And how about the for sure the best was Missy Gannon, pulling off the jersey, to show the shirt. She's going down with the arrow. Kona's like already off guard. And then she hits her with, she hit her with the jab. She was woozy, and then she came with the uppercut and hits her with the air ball comment, and Kona was very shook. And you know what? I love it.
I believe one of the Ulti World writers said that Kona wasn't prepared for her own funeral when she walked into that press conference. I think it was Chris that said that. Definitely correct about that. I mean, Kona and she thought she got one in when she commented on Missy Gannon's distance.
Yeah.
She's like,
she was playing along.
Right. And then it just hit a little too close to home.
No, it was good.
But like Double G in the KJ face off, like a UFC fight kind of thing, I thought was really good. It was really funny. What did Emerson say? He said, I'm coming to I'm going to try and ruin your weekend.
Yeah, he
said
did
something like that to Ricky.
He ruined it.
Yeah, he did. Holy smokes.
I mean, maybe we can start there real quick. I mean, of all of the rounds, of all of the matchups, the only one that truly shocked me in its result was Emerson beating Ricky. And that's the thing about match play that you got to love. You got to love it. It's the same. Like, Eagle was the best player in MPO, but lost to Calvin because Calvin just, got out to an early strong start, and that's match play, right? In stroke play, I think Eagle wins this tournament going away. But, and I haven't looked at the strokes or anything. I think that's a sort of a useless exercise because people are playing against the hole and they're laying up and there's all kinds of, gamesmanship going on. But, Calvin gets the early lead. But it's the same thing. Ricky has a couple bad spots early on. Emerson's hanging around. Emerson's making the birdies when Ricky's making the birdies. Emerson's a gamer, man. Like, you can't overlook that guy. He can just show up and compete at any time. And, he knocked off somebody who you never expect to lose in round one. But I told you it was going to be crazy.
You told me. I remember they said it on the broadcast, and I can't say how many brackets exactly were filled out, but it was more than 3,000 of them. And on Disc Golf Network, they said that after round one, due to the Ricky upset, one bracket was left. There were something like 38 people picked Emerson to win, but after when it was all said and done,
right,
one bracket was left after round one.
I mean, because the 38 people who picked Emerson to win also picked some other crazy nonsense, and that didn't work out for them.
Like the Eagle. If anyone picked the Eagle upset,
yeah,
like they could. Oh, I'll go with the Colton Montgomery 16 seed.
Oh, gosh.
That didn't work out.
Colton in the press conference, he was like, I'm just happy to be here. Like, I got in because other people couldn't come, and I'm here, and I'm excited, and like. Eagle is just like, bro, I'm gonna crush you. And he just crushed him.
Man, he did. I think that was one of the. I don't know if that one or the Deanne Carey Paige Pierce was the most lopsided. Match.
Oof. I mean, yeah. What are you gonna do? Like it. In a way, it's pretty surprising that Eagle didn't win. Right? We talked about it. And by the way, we got heavily called out in the YouTube comments for talking about par too much last week, when obviously par is not really relevant for the for this kind of course, for this kind of match play event, because who cares? You just got to beat the player you're going up against, which is true. But again, the thing is, if you have a 650-foot par 3, pretty much only Eagle is reaching that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's like, yes, Eagle's always going to have an advantage because he's a longer thrower. But if a hole is designed such that, in theory, you're able to get a 2 on it, but Eagle's the only one that can reach it, then he's going to be winning more often than not because of that advantage. Whereas if you have a 400-foot par 3, everybody's reaching it. So that was just interesting. I got to give Calvin a lot of credit. Played hole 1 really well all week. Did it again. Got the early lead right off the bat, and then just was very precise. Where Eagle maybe was throwing further up the fairway, potentially in better positions on a lot of holes in terms of just having shorter upshots, Calvin was still making those upshots, making his putts, and taking advantage of Eagle's mistakes. And I think you can see there that, having the outright distance advantage isn't enough to win.
Well, and we talked a little bit about it with the FPO matchups, but as that distance advantage shrinks, the risk reward, and specifically the risk, becomes amplified and the reward is diminished. When you are Eagle up against Colton Montgomery and can outdrive him, I don't know how far Colton throws, but Eagle parked a 700-foot air shot. He throws a lot farther than Colton does. When you throw that much further than another player, then the risk is mitigated significantly, because when you go out of bounds 200 yards or 200 feet farther than your opponent, you still can save the same number of strokes as your opponent, because they still have a lot of work left. The farther your opponent can throw, the greater the risk that comes in order to gain that marginal distance difference. And so because Calvin can throw not as far as Eagle, but throw relatively far, and in fact of the rest of the group, I would say is probably number 2 or number 3 in distance, the reward of Eagle's distance diminishes and the risk becomes amplified every time and is punished significantly more for those strokes that didn't matter in early rounds where he had so much distance advantage.
Yeah. I mean, and it was super fun to watch Paige versus Missy, because there's more of a distance disadvantage there for Missy than, relatively in MPO. And she was just balling out there. I think she was one of the most fun stories of the weekend. Just getting the win after win, and basically was right there with Paige. I mean, it felt like a coin flip. She hits that huge, I don't know how far it was, 60 feet uphill straddle, bangs it home for a huge birdie. That was awesome. And, I think Paige, basically on every shot, right? Paige is going to have that little bit of an edge. That's why she's the number 1 player in the world, because that adds up over time. But I thought Missy did a great job in the format, really picking her spots, putting pressure on the other player, because part of the game is, not making mistakes. I think that's one thing that really bit some players. They tried to do too much. They made mistakes. And if you go OB when the other player's in the fairway, you're already at a spot where you're hoping just to have the hole. Not halve the hole, by the way. That was driving me nuts this weekend. Anyway, I don't even want to get into all the terminology stuff. but it's super fun. And Missy was just, I think Missy's like clearly to me leveled up her game this year and is somebody that you have to kind of look at as like a serious competitor week in and week out as a potential winner.
I don't know. I think that because of how well Missy's been playing lately, and I don't remember what I said in the show, so I may be wrong about this, but I personally don't know if I would say Missy Gannon making finals is the Cinderella story. I think it's actually, I mean, her wins were exciting. They were great wins, and the way she played it was exciting. But at the end of the day, I think that seeing Missy Gannon in finals is something that it's like we could have very reasonably expected. It was a very real possibility, given how well she has played lately and how smart I think she plays her golf. And so I think if Missy wins, I think then maybe you're pretty excited about that in terms of what she did. I thought it was an exciting weekend to watch Missy though, and I think it just cements us further into like how great Missy is of a disc golfer. Question for you, Charlie.
Sure.
Do you think we can read in how much I guess weight can we give to this weekend and performances of players relative to what's coming up at the rest of the tour?
For me, it's mostly a one-off. I mean, I think seeing how people perform under pressure is revealing. I think seeing when people are capable of hitting a big putt when they really need to that's an important skill. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about like real pressure with like thousands of dollars on the line for making or missing a putt. That's actually pretty rare. You know, a lot of players don't experience that week in and week out. It's not so often that a player is going to be stepping up to, you know, hole 16, right? Hole 10 on this strange 12-hole course. And, you know, be in a position where it's like, wow, I really got to make this putt. Because if you're finishing 10th or whatever, and, you know, you could finish 9th or you could finish 10th, depending on the outcome of the putt, you're usually talking about a couple $100, not like $3,500 or whatever, you know, depending on where you were in the competition. I think that's useful. I don't really think that this suddenly means that, you know, Missy Gannon is the number 2 player in the world now. No, but, you know, I think that it's a great format for someone who's got a really level head and can just like be consistent. And I feel like that's what Missy Gannon has been. And so I'm not surprised to see her do well. She really mitigated mistakes. You know, she beat Haley King, which I picked Haley King to make the final. Haley King had a couple OB strokes late, missed a couple circle 1 putts late. Missy, steady as she goes. Boom, boom, hitting the putts. Only went OB on one hole. You know, just got kind of like smoked on hole. I think it was hole 1 in that Haley King matchup, and then didn't go OB again. And you know, knowing your game, playing to what your competitor tends to do, that's great disc golf. In fact, I come away, I'm like, man, I should have picked Missy. I feel like I can see now the rationale for picking Missy to make it to the final and almost win.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great takeaway. And I think what you pointed out that I think is valuable is that every single round, those putts had pressure and mattered. It's even if you are guys who are at the top, you know, Ricky and Eagle and Chris and Calvin, even they don't have to hit putts on the final hole or on hole 16 in order to close out to make sure they secure a better payday and the win. You know, there are some weeks that happens, but there are other weeks when you're 5 strokes ahead and it's just not a big deal. So I do appreciate and think that's a great takeaway in terms of that pressure and how people play under the pressure.
And by the way, $10,000 to the winners. Paige Pierce, Calvin Heimburg both take home 10 large. That's Paige Pierce's biggest payout, I believe, of her entire career. Definitely biggest in 2021. And I'm pretty sure she won 10,000 last year in the Tour Championship. So matching her biggest payout of her career. That's a lot of money for a match play event. That's just like kind of a random thing. Like we're talking about this to me is a signal from the Pro Tour that the Tour Championship is going to be a big fat purse.
It's something that, and I think this goes a little bit with the seriousness of the event as well that you were speaking to, is if this had been for, $1,000, there probably would have been a lot of that banter that you talked about.
Yeah,
there probably would not have been right. If there probably would not have been nearly as many players either. But given the nature of this payout, this is a legitimate event and is going to be important on tour because in terms of payouts, I think Worlds beat it. And that was it for the winner.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah.
So it is a big deal. And that's, especially with the weird format, I think that money has the capacity to make this something that is critical on tour to some players, and they're going to look forward to this as being an event that they're not going to miss. And that's that there's the money is enough to do that.
Okay, can we talk about the course?
Yeah, we can talk about the course, Charlie.
It was not good.
No. And
I found out today that, because remember we talked about it on the show last week, right? The whole thing was like, they had the course there, but it wasn't really a championship level course. So they brought in Steve Brinster and Simon Lizotte to come in and, basically lay down a course that would be suitable for the professional players to come in and play a match play event. So that happened. Steve Brinster and Simon Lizotte went down for a few hours. They, walked through, designed some holes. And then they designed an 18-hole course as well. Then the course that the holes that they designed were simply not used. The tournament director, Steve Bro, who was part of the course design team, eventually just built a 12-hole course with his own layout and didn't use the holes that Simon and Steve built. And I messaged Simon about it today, and he had a long reply. Said, they went down there and that, there wasn't a lot of communication, and he felt like ultimately some of the late changes that were made by the Pro Tour and Jeff Spring, made it acceptable, but still not great, and thinks that, they need to make sure that in the future courses are up to snuff. And I mean, I think everybody's being very diplomatic for what was like kind of a disastrous course, all things considered. I mean, it really did not, after all of these great courses we've had on tour lately, it felt like a real letdown to watch, what is otherwise a pretty cool and fun format and event. Feel like we were just watching people throw on random, wide open holes. It was just not, I did not enjoy it that much.
Hole 1, I think, is indicative of a larger problem, being that nobody won points on hole 1. Some people lost points on hole 1. Look at the final round when Paige, that putter just slips out of her hand and goes OB. She's made that shot a million times. Missy made a good shot.
Don't let Paige get away with that one and claim that it was the course's fault. She totally shanked it. And should learn to throw an overstable putter approach, in my opinion.
Yes, she should. That's my point, though, is that the course didn't do that to her. She did that to her.
Okay.
Right? Calvin also scored in the final round on hole 1. He should not have scored on hole 1. That was because Eagle played that hole poorly. But otherwise, most of those shots were routine. Hole 1, I hated. I didn't like the course as it was. I hated hole 1 though. I thought it was so boring. Throughout the weekend, hole 1 would come on and I would use it to go get some snacks or something and then come back and watch after it was over. It was not a great course. It was not a great course.
It just shows you that you cannot just, it's not like there were no redeeming holes or anything like that. There were some cool shots. I like the big downhill one where you had to kind of stick it right on the green on the hill. Otherwise it could skip OB or roll OB. That's kind of a cool shot. There were some cool shots here and there, but on the whole, watching players throw hyzers and almost never, ever, ever have to throw a forehand through never any gaps at all. There's the one gap, right, off the tee on that one hole. And then I forget what matchup it was, but back-to-back players in the matchup hit a tree. And I was like, wow, they hit the first available, both of them, because they've had no experience this entire week of having to try to hit a gap. It goes to show you that that's just not good enough anymore. Making holes long and that's it, and you add OB, come on, like that is not interesting. So a definite minus for this event was the course itself. But I do think, like, imagine having to watch stroke play at this. Like, imagine 18 holes of stroke play out here. Oh, that would have been brutal. Would have been unwatchable. So anyway, I think I have to say the 12-hole thing, it was like really weird, and I don't expect that to happen again. It sounds like it was not the original intention. I thought it worked okay. Like the pacing was fine, but just the course, like any other course on tour would have been a better situation, I think, than this.
I actually will make an argument for the 12-hole course.
It kind of
because
worked,
I felt,
right?
Yeah, because when there was a blowout, I didn't have to watch 13 or 14 holes because there was still a mathematical possibility that someone caught up. But if it was close, like it didn't feel like I wish there were more holes, right? Like the playoff format worked fine. Like it was enough holes to determine the winner. But
things would be different if there was more variety and there was like more opportunities for players to use their skills, which they are good at, to get back into the match.
Yes, I think that's true for some cases. But I think like there were a couple, I think with the wins that were by 2 or 3, maybe. But like, how long would that Colton and Eagle matchup have gone on, or the Paige and Deanne Carey? That just at the end, you're like, there's just no chance. Like, we're on hole 12 and Eagle's up by 5. And you're like, oh, there's
we only
still
got one more, though.
Chance.
I mean, that's the thing. Eventually, it's going to end. And it's going to end early.
Eventually. But
I didn't hate the 12-hole thing. That was what
I didn't either. I liked it. I thought it worked.
I thought it did, too. What else about this? Anything else you want to point out?
I think if you look at the bracket, when I looked at the final 4 for MPO, I wasn't shocked. And same thing with FPO. Like both of them, I was like, oh yeah, okay, this I expect. Like this is not shocking in any way, shape, or form. You know, Eagle, Chris, James, Calvin. You're like, yep, okay, that's not shocking. Paige, Sarah, Missy, Haley, and the only reason Katrina's not there is because Katrina had to get beat by Haley. I'm like, yep.
That matchup lived up to the billing, by the way.
It did. It was an excellent, and I think it still has, like, it had a lot of potential to be one of the best matchups of the weekend until the Missy Paige went down in finals. And I was like, okay, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah.
That title got taken. But it was at least the final 4 for both of them was pretty predictable. And not to say that I had it on my bracket, because I sure didn't. But it's not shocking in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion.
Well, I had the spicy take that Adam Hammis was going to make the final. I did call that one of the top players was going to get beat, but I didn't see Emerson beating Ricky as being the thing. Ultimately, with the course laid out the way that it was, Eagle really, in retrospect, feels like an obvious pick to. I mean, probably a lot of people probably picked him to win the whole thing, and that's probably the odds-on correct pick. As I said in the Open, I did pick both Calvin and Paige. The points are going to rain down on me, as I'm sure that I won the points contest as well. We'll have to look it up, but
certainly,
I agree. The cream rose to the top. I was curious about how that was going to play out, because I was like, well, maybe some players are going to be like real gamers in this format. I think you could argue that Missy was that she played a kind of above her pay grade a little bit in this format. Otherwise, I think mostly we just saw great players play great.
I think if you want drama, the course should be one that is a woods course.
Or you just need a blend. You need a wide set of shot selection required. Like a Waco type course or an MVP type course.
I think both of those would be or Winthrop.
Sure.
Little too many forehands
Winthrop
maybe,
but I don't mind that. I think, Winthrop is a little bit heavy on the, like, we're going to find ways to challenge your shot making with like weirdness as opposed to like natural trees and things. But I do agree that like it requires a lot of versatility.
Yeah. So
this course was Heiser's. mostly.
That would be interesting, though. What if you did the Match Play Championship 2 weeks before USDGC, 2.5, and you did it at Winthrop?
I kind of like the idea of this being an event that they can find a spot for in an otherwise unvisited community on tour.
Okay, all right.
I not that I wouldn't watch, but
sure. No. I think that's a great reason.
I think this tournament though did conflict with an A tier in the area, and like a lot of local folks were not happy about that. Understandably,
well,
so.
There was the Pittsburgh Open, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Holly Finley won, I saw on social media. But then you also had the Michigan State Championships.
That's true.
Because Andrew Marby talked about that. And,
yep.
I mean, we got a lot of Michigan golfers on tour. Isn't Kyle Klein from Michigan? It's from Wyoming, Michigan. Is that where it is?
I think that's right.
I know his city is Wyoming because every time I look at it, I'm like, nah, there's not a pro from Wyoming. And then I realize it's the city. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. I think it's Wyoming, Michigan.
It's freaking me out, though. It's like people with two last names, like their first name is a last name, you know?
Yeah. So, Kyle, pick a different hometown. But, that's a choice he had to make. And
yeah, I mean,
takes away.
We're welcome to the new era of disc golf. I think
sure.
We're going to get to the point where pros are going to have to make those choices, or they're going to just not play those local events. And I don't know what you do about that. I think it means that, big A tiers are going to have to advocate for being on the tour, essentially being a Silver Series stop or being on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, getting NT status, getting a major, because otherwise you're probably not going to get a lot of pros.
Here's actually something I'll say. Just thought of this. I think it'd be smart to put the match play over a big regional A tier, because then I think pros can plan around it regardless of if they make match play or not.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So if you have Lone Star Classic, that was B tier this year, but you had a lot of pros who attended, and the payouts were huge thanks to the added cash. If you put the Match Play Championships the same weekend and in the same region as the Lone Star Classic, pros can plan on going knowing that whether or not they make it, they have another event that they can then attend.
I kind of like that.
So,
I mean, I think the challenge is like volunteer base and, spectating and that kind of stuff. But I think if you were to coordinate with a big A tier TD, that could actually be very cool. And you would end up getting lots of pros going to the A tier,
right?
Because the top, 16 and 8 or whatever it is, go to play the match play event, and everybody else goes to the A tier. Cool idea.
I think you get a lot of the bubble players, ones who think they might make it, maybe not.
One last thing on this before we go to break. Prize Picks, newly announced partner with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. It's like I think it basically dubs itself like a daily fantasy sports website where you're essentially picking prop bets. It's over under. Mm-hmm. Like literally it's over under. They should definitely sponsor the Upshot, like very obvious. And, you pick your over-unders with various things, like how many, in the case of this weekend, it was like how many matchups is the player going to win? How many holes is the player going to win? And you pick the over-under, and there's various ways that you can win money based on those picks. I don't know if they somehow get around it being called gambling because it's like you're betting on the skill, but essentially it's prop betting. And this is like a new partnership with the Pro Tour. I've heard rumors about this, and it's no surprise. Every sports entity under the sun is going full force into fantasy, daily fantasy, sports betting, gambling, the whole thing. And it's been a sea change over the last 5 years. Thoughts on Prize Picks? You gonna get in some bets?
I probably won't. I think I'll stick with our low stakes. Granted, we haven't picked the stakes yet for our over-under bets. So we still got to do that. But I think that it is a way in order to advance the sport. When you pull up Prize Picks, you pull up betting apps. If you could get on DraftKings, for example, when you pull up the app and it advertises. I pull up ESPN Fantasy, and it's like, oh, play fantasy golf or fantasy NASCAR or fantasy, whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I forget that like those sports have fantasy. It's kind of ridiculous sometimes in my head, but I hope more people see disc golf and think, oh, I can't believe there's disc golf, because there will be some who say, wait a minute, I can win money by watching some dudes throw frisbees. It'll happen.
It's gonna happen. I'm gonna start checking out the lines. I'll say that much. I'm a sports bettor. I enjoy it, and I think it's just a matter of time before like true futures betting and everything comes to disc golf. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if it was here next year. Even at the end of this season, it seems like a possibility. And it's Ultimate Frisbee. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Ultimate Frisbee, the AUDL has a partnership with DraftKings, and they had lines for the last 6 or 8 weeks. And you could straight gamble thousands of dollars if you wanted on Ultimate Frisbee. Why not disc golf? I think there's definitely an audience. So maybe if we hear from a lot of listeners that they want to get our prize picks pick 'em in there, we'll throw some bones to the bettors out there and give you our best bets. So we'll see about that. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have a very special match play bracket going down here on the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Well, it's time to set your calendar again. October 1st, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, it's the custom program drop. So if you're looking to build the custom bag of your dreams, go over to pounddiscgolf.com. You can play around in the custom pack builder and get ready for the drop on October 1st. Be quick because they sell out fast, but you can get the pound bag of your dreams and roll up to the course in style. pounddiscgolf.com. The Upshot is brought to you by Diameter Apparel. Diameter Apparel jerseys are showing up at more courses, tournaments, and on the backs of more touring pros than ever before. Why? Because they're comfortable and because they look so good. Touring disc golf professionals understand the need to stay focused on their game plan during rounds. When they're comfortable, they're confident, and when they're confident, performance peaks. These beautifully designed jerseys are available online at diameterapparel.com. You can also order custom designed jerseys for your tournament or event. Breathable, durable, beautiful, Diameter Apparel. Welcome back to the Upshot, and it is time for the biggest stories of 2021 Match Play Extravaganza. That's right. We've taken the 16 biggest stories in disc golf so far this season, as determined by us. We've seeded them, we've put them in a bracket, and now they're going head-to-head in match play. What exactly does that mean? Well, we get to decide. So join us as we jump in to our bracketology here, and we lay down these picks. We're going to have to come to consensus on which is going to move on. So why don't we kick it off with the 1 versus 16 matchup. You don't see the upset very often in March Madness. I'm not sure we're going to see it here either, but let's hear what it is.
So our 1 and 16 matchup, number 1, and granted, the seeding was just according to Charlie and I's beliefs.
And just like, kind of just like what felt right.
Right. There's no science behind this. So number 1, we had Macbeth's $10 million contract. That's right. That happened this year. It feels like forever ago.
That was like not even that much more than 6 months ago. I mean, it was like late February. Somehow that indeed was this year. $10 million contract signed by Macbeth.
Seed number 16, continued COVID cancellations. Beaver State Fling, the European Championships, tournaments, and then Portland Open getting moved, also due to COVID restrictions, as well as down, I think it was OTB Open, actually, maybe not Portland, maybe it was OTB. Anyway, cancellations and some tour disruptions due to COVID. Charlie, what's your pick here?
I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this one. I think the signaling of the Macbeth, because it's not really about the Macbeth contract, right? Like, good for Paul to get $10 million 10-year deal. That's amazing. But literally, when people who know nothing about disc golf or know a little, they're like, oh yeah, like I've thrown some B at the chains. I'm like, oh, like, you know, have you heard about the fact, you know what Paul Macbeth is? And I tell them about this contract, because there's no better way to get people to understand that this is like serious sport than to tell them that fact. And sure, I love people talk to me, people who know nothing about disc golf talk to me about the James Conrad shot at Worlds, the highlight. And they're like, oh, I saw it on SportsCenter or whatever. Like, that's very awesome. But you also have like people like diving into the water in American flag shorts and like all kinds of crazy nonsense. And like, even on ESPN, they were like, how drunk is everyone at that event right now? And so like, as awesome as it is, it doesn't necessarily connote the same kind of, you know, what I think is like, no, the sport is like actually getting huge and very serious, that the $10 million contract does. So for me, $10 million contract wins here. The COVID cancellations, I mean, I actually think, if anything, you know, losing European Open at a major stinks. But for the most part, it's been a minor thing. It hasn't been a huge part of the season. Kudos to all of the folks involved in the PDGA and the Pro Tour for kind of keeping things moving this year.
You know, the one thing that I think gives 16 a little bit of weight here and probably falls under COVID cancellations are the Europeans not being able to come over and play.
Sure.
That adds some weight. I think it's alleviated by Kristen Tatar and the group who are coming over for USDGC. It signals bright futures ahead, but I agree with you. I think Macbeth $10 million contract has to move on. All
right, moves on to the Elite Eight. We go to the 8-9 matchup. This is what we'll be facing off against the $10 million contract. In the 8 spot, lots of long-term contract extensions got signed this offseason. We're calling this 2021. It's kind of 2020/2021. But tons of players getting locked up to long-term deals, 2, 3, 4, even 5-year contracts, as all of these manufacturers jockeyed for position in the marketplace amidst this crazy COVID boom. In the 9 spot, Katrina Allen wins her second world championship. Incredible drama, you know, hangs in all weekend, beats Paige Pierce on the final hole, on that amazing hole 18, and gets her second world title. Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the long-term contract extensions are big for those players. However, we also had some criticism of those contracts. Remember back when we had Casey White on the show, he talked about how some players aren't even able to get like PD2s, and they were having to like borrow them from other players or get them from fans because they just didn't have them for tournaments. So I think the contract extensions were big, but the hindrance due to COVID meant that those contracts didn't quite deliver as much as I think they needed to for players this year. Katrina Allen's win was big for her, but it was also big in the way like beating Paige, and you know, it I think it plays a significant role in the FPO storyline for the year. And so I pick the slight upset of Katrina Allen winning Worlds as being the more significant event.
Yeah, I don't think I don't want contract extensions going up against contract in the second round anyway. But I totally agree with you here. I think Katrina, the thing is, like, Paige was supposed to be crowned the 6th time. This was like this storybook. Literally, they're making a documentary about the whole thing. And Katrina was like, nope, I'm going to go get that crown. And I just thought, it was kind of a weird Worlds at times. Like, there was some moments of really strong play. There were also lots of errors from everybody. And I think that pressure cooker environment of Worlds at the altitude, with the heat, the whole thing made really fascinating sports television. And, if remember, before the James Conrad moment, that was the crazy finish, right? Paige fluffs the upshot, goes OB, and like Katrina has that insane shot, the huge anti-flex that somehow just barely stays in bounds. It was an incredible moment, and only overshadowed by, one of the best shots we've seen ever in disc golf. And I think that, for me, that whole build up to that moment, and then her, hoisting the trophy and all of the, hard struggling times that she's had getting back to this point to win another world title also cements her career as like an all-time great. I think, she was a Hall of Famer anyway, but like now definitely. So I agree, Katrina Allen.
All right, Charlie, take us to the 12-5 matchup.
12-5, here we go. In the 5 spot, the return of spectators. It's hard, like it's easy to forget that, this time last year, there were no spectators at tournaments, none, 0. And now we're seeing thousands of people flocking to courses and pushing up payouts as a result because they're buying tickets and they're buying merch. That's going up against Kristen Tatar's really strong showing, including a couple of Elite Series wins when she came over to the United States, for Worlds, and then that stretch of the tour. Obviously, really the only major serious European competitor we've seen over in the U.S. to this point. She ramped up from being merely good to dominating. And so, Josh, your thoughts?
This upset is one that I think has some potential, but not against the return of spectators. And the return of spectators, honestly, might be seated a little bit low. I think that this has set a foundation for the way that payouts and tournaments are going to function moving forward, and lends itself to the professionalism of the Macbeth contract. That as you begin to control the spectators a little bit, so it's not just a madhouse of people running everywhere sometimes and people in the fairways, I think that's going to change the look of disc golf and add to that professionalism. So I personally think that the return of spectators takes it, though Kristen Tatar's strong showing added a lot to this season's storyline. I don't know if it has the long-term resonating impacts past it.
I have nothing to add. I agree. Print it.
Only way that changes, Kristen Tatar wins USDG or the Throw Pink Championship. Then I think
we're not there yet, but we would have to reconsider at that point.
Yeah.
Next up, Josh, take us to it.
Yeah, the number 4 seed, we have PDGA friction with players. This one was obviously spurred by Worlds and the kind of blow up that happened at Worlds, but felt like a culmination of tension between the players and the PDGA that has been happening for a while now, especially coming from the U.S. Women's Disc Golf Championship, and culminating in the board meeting and the summit back in, is that in August?
Oh gosh, I don't even
July
remember.
Or
I think
August?
I think it was August. Might have been July. Before
July
D-Glow.
or August. Before
Whatever
D-Glow.
D-Glow was.
Culminating in that kind of summit and continue discussions about what the tours are going to look like moving forward and the standards that the PDGA needs to address. And it really felt like it was kind of a turning point at that moment. New faces emerging on tour, though. You got Kyle Klein. You've got Adam. I think Adam Hammis has his own. We'll talk a little bit more about Adam Hammis later. But Kona Panis getting an Elite Series win. Missy Gannon getting an Elite Series win. You had a lot of people getting those kind of Elite Series wins.
Burr, Ella Hansen. You've got people who aren't necessarily winning events, but have been making a name for themselves.
Yes. So
that's a 13 seed. Wow.
Yeah.
That's tough. This is a tricky one. I think that some of the conflict that we've seen between the PDGA and players is going to lead to long-term changes in the future that make things better for professional players. And some of those players are some of those new faces emerging on tour. I have to say, I think like the friction story feels like it was a big story. Like it definitely deserves to be a top 4 seed. But is it really fundamentally going to change kind of the overall trajectory of things? Like, let's say there was no friction, right? Everything went amazing at Worlds and whatever. Do we see different outcomes in 2022 and beyond? Maybe. But I'm not convinced by that. But new faces on tour. I think that the influx of new competitors, like literally new, like Ella Hansen, who technically didn't start playing in 2021, but I think it's fair to say that she emerged in 2021. Connor O'Reilly. These young players coming up through the youth scene, sort of the standard pipeline, along with the really strong growth of some of the players who'd already been on tour somewhat. I think this is a huge deal because I think it's going to show other players that it's possible to go out on the road and make this happen. We're going to start seeing this increase, right? This is going to lead to more of this kind of growth, and we're going to see increasingly athletic people starting to play disc golf, and we're going to see the next Eagle McMahon at some point soon. We're going to see the next Paige Pierce at some point soon. Maybe they will surpass those players. And I think that big picture, it feels like this year more than any that I can remember. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, disc golf's growing fast, and the players are here to like meet it. And obviously, there's a lot of interconnected parts here because payouts going up and the sponsorships getting bigger. That means that it suddenly becomes more feasible to go out and play on tour. But it's not just the same old stale stories this year. It's not just Paige versus Katrina. Like, there were times 2-3 years ago where it was just like, well, Paige is going to win again. Paige is going to win again. Paige is going to win again. I pick Paige. That really, I mean, there's been stretches of the season where it feels like that's true and she's still the best player, but that's not been the story in FPO at all. And it's because of the emergence of some of these new faces. So I'm going to pick the upset. Josh, do you agree?
I think so. And I really buy the logic because at first, when you first started talking about it, I was like, this story is too big. It's too big. But I think that the idea that the story is that the PDGA was falling behind. And if they didn't fall behind and kept up, right? Or if it just meant that the PDGA just got to the Pro Tour level slower, it doesn't change a lot. I think there can be an argument made that capitalizing on the momentum of the post-COVID disc golf surge is an important reason why the PDGA had to move now and like adapt, and that friction was critical now. But I agree with you that I think the new faces on tour have fundamentally shaped the way we look at the tournaments week in and week out, and will change it moving forward.
All right, let's go on to the 6 versus 11 matchup. In the 6th spot, the Disc Golf Network hits 25,000 subscribers. I don't know what the number is today, but we know they've hit that mark. It's above that now, it's somewhere. And that's going up against the announcement of this new European Pro Tour and it's associated. This is a great matchup because it's got a little bit of competition naturally built in, and their new disc golf stream that's going to be showing the European Pro Tour stops. So the 6 versus 11 matchup. Josh, your thoughts?
I think Disc Golf Network hitting 25K subscribers is big. I think that they were like, it's not fair to say that it was an inevitability, right? This could have crashed and burned and fallen out of the sky. It didn't, and that's noteworthy. I think that the announcement of the European Pro Tour is more significant, though, for a couple of reasons. The first of which is I think it does create, and even though they tried to say, oh, this isn't competition, it's collaborative. At the end of the day, when there are free final rounds available and people decide they're going to pay for one subscription or the other, it is competition. You'll get those who pay for both. But there are also going to be some who choose the Pro Tour over, or the European Pro Tour over Disc Golf Network. And that in and of itself means that the Disc Golf Network is going to have to push as well. The second thing that's exceptional is I think that this kind of coverage plays a critical role in the advancement of the sport, not in the United States, in the European continent. And development of media is critical to continuing to grow just the mass of disc golf that is there. And granted, in some countries it already is bigger per capita than the United States, just thanks to population and the growth and the popularity of it. It's going to continue to get bigger thanks to this stream. And I'm excited to watch European disc golf and know European disc golfers better. And so I think I picked the European Pro Tour as the more important of the two.
I think we have our first spot of disagreement. I think DGN hitting 25,000 subscribers. You said it could have crashed and burned, but it didn't. Yeah, but I think you're selling it short a little bit. It's not like they got 3,000 subscribers. They got 25 or almost, maybe they have 30 now. They might have 30. We're talking about projections from last year, remember. Projections from last year. High-end projections at the end of 2020. DGN hoped to have 3,000 subscribers. They now have basically an order of magnitude more than that 1 year later. This is economic altering numbers. This is, holy shit, we're now making 6 figures a month and like we're going to double the size of our crew. I mean, how many more cameras do they have out there now than they did last year? I know people love to complain. They want to complain about the commentators. They're going to complain about the cell service. They're going to complain about the advertisements. They're going to complain about everything. But like overall, when you sit down and you turn on the Disc Golf Network, you get to watch HD disc golf in real time, and it like is coherent, and it, you know, you follow it along just like a regular sporting event. Is it perfect? No. But like, the fact that they have all these subscribers, it's not just about the fact that the service is doing well. It's about the fact that this is one of the primary ways that the tour makes money. And I have to say, I think that the overall success of the professional tour in the United States, whether that's the DGPT, the PDGA, the XQYZ, or whatever, the success of the professional tour is going to be the driving force for the continued growth of disc golf. Because if you can monetize that high end and you can get it out to the masses on ESPN and people want to watch, that's going to bring lots more people into the fold. And I've been a skeptic of this argument in the past. I've been a skeptic. But how many people have I talked to that say, oh, I watched this thing on Jomez, this YouTube thing, right? It served me Jomez, and I clicked, and now I watch disc golf all the time. People who don't even play disc golf watch it. Now you can say, okay, well that's Jomez, right? That's not DGN. Fair, but the live view eyeballs, eventually that's where it's going to go. We've talked about this for years, right? When the big networks come knocking, and ESPN is like, hey, we want to start showing live disc golf, or we want to start showing disc golf, they're going to want to show live eventually. So I think that this, particularly because of the revenue implications that it has for the tour, is a bigger deal than this. Well, we don't know anything about the European Pro Tour yet. It's mostly hypothetical. It's mostly an announcement. I can make a press release too. I can say I'm starting the New York City Pro Tour, and we're going to play disc golf in and around the city parks, and the targets are people walking with the strollers or whatever. I don't. That's a horrible thing to say. I'm sorry. I don't feel like an announcement is enough to warrant an upset here. So we got to come to consensus.
Do you think that 9,000 concurrent viewers on their first stream is enough to warrant?
It's impressive. It's impressive. It's very
That's
impressive.
Huge. That's huge.
It is huge. I think it's a big deal for Europe. Don't get me wrong. But I think the bigger 2021 story is that like DGN is now like a mega player. And, you know, we don't know much about the European Pro Tour at this point.
I'll let you have it. I'm coming.
Give me one more shot. Give me one more shot. I want to be convinced.
All right. You're right that Disc Golf Network skyrocketed. I don't think, I mean, we've talked a lot about the sustainability of the different things. I think the problem is the hardcore fans got locked in, and this was, you know, last year it started to grow, but it continued over. There were still lots of places that the options of what you could do for recreation were still limited due to the resurgence of like the Delta variant and just COVID. And so being locked in meant that people were still looking for media outlets. The problem is that your attraction right now, thanks to COVID, is you've got the hardcore fans, but now you have a lot of casual fans who are going to continue to watch Jomez, who are fine with Jomez, who are going to continue to watch Jomez. And I think Disc Golf Network is going to plateau for a little while. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think that the European Pro Tour is a source of media in a place that had a void of really compelling and as a primary source of disc golf media, whereas the Disc Golf Network has the complement of Jomez. That means that it's not going to be the end all be all moving forward. I in my opinion. I am fine going either way because I think the arguments are legitimate on both.
Who wins in match play here, right? Like who's hitting the big putt? This is match play. This is not just a pure bracket.
Sure.
We've seen DGN hit the putts. The European Pro Tour is still just hypothetical mostly.
Right. I think if you take this out of disc golf, and maybe this is a terrible idea, but I put it in like March Madness, I think Disc Golf Network has a suffocating defense that overcomes what was a pretty flashy team that we thought could bring an upset.
I think that the European Pro Tour has the potential to be not just one of the big stories of this year, but one of the big stories of like the decade, if it works out. But we've seen nothing yet, right? We've seen a live stream. I'm not sure that's enough for me because we've seen other ventures in Europe come and go. We've seen other ventures in disc golf come and go. I don't think that, a DGN who's getting $5 to $10 a subscriber times 25,000 or whatever it is per month is going anywhere. And so I think that's where I really place my vote.
All right, that's fine. I think it's a good argument.
It's a good one. All right, onwards. The 3 seed, PDGA membership at all-time highs. We're coming up on PDGA member 100,000 on the year. I don't know if we've quite hit that number yet, but I'm sure we're going to hear about it when it happens. It's almost definitely going to happen. And that's going up against the number 14 seed. Paul Macbeth announces a new charitable foundation, the Paul Macbeth Foundation. Josh, take it away.
I will say, I think that the Paul Macbeth Foundation exceeded my expectations in terms of the immediacy and how effective they were at putting courses. Like they've got the course in Mexico and they've got 2 more announced in other South American countries. And it impressed me. Don't get me wrong. It really did. Disc golf requires more than just courses though, in order to thrive in an area. It requires a sustainable access to discs and equipment. I think it requires access to media, which is why I thought the European Pro Tour was such a big announcement. There isn't a Spanish stream available, right? Eventually, I think there will be, but there are limitations in terms of disc golf infrastructure, and the Macbeth Foundation has planted the seed. And that is an amazing effort that I very highly commend. But PDGA memberships at an all-time high. Those are people who are paying money to play in tournaments, to play competitive disc golf, who are invested and are paying more money than they're paying enough money that I think they're invested in this sport and aren't going to go away.
The reason that I think PDGA membership being at all-time highs is also a big deal. Not just the investment of the players themselves, but the literal cash money that the PDGA makes from all these members that is going to make it possible for them to hire more people and take on more projects, fund more programs, and grow. There's so many opportunities for disc golf that are just totally untapped right now. I mean, I think about, there's a few people working on, disc golf at the youth level, but it's a small number. There's so much opportunity to grow in colleges, especially. And there's people out there doing it, but like the PGA can really be a catalyst for these things in a much bigger way with more money coming in. They have, millions of dollars in the bank right now. And they have a new challenge, which is, whoa, our organization just like doubled in size. How do we spend all this money? And that's an incredibly important thing. And it's going to be something that has a long lasting impact on the trajectory of the sport going forward. So I think that's a huge deal. Now, this is no disrespect to the Paul Macbeth Foundation. I think it's great. I think something like it needs to exist. I think having Macbeth behind it makes it a lot easier to, raise money and put courses in the ground, and that's going to also do big things. But the PDGA is a huge multi-million-dollar annual budget organization with, 20 staff members or however many they have. And that's simply just a bigger, more important thing than a nonprofit that has a couple of folks on the board. So maybe the Paul McBeth Foundation will get huge like that at some point. But for now, the PDGA, the bigger deal, and I think it's got to move on.
Adam Hammes, seed number 7, actually. We'll start with the 7 seed in the next matchup.
Okay.
Discmania leaving Innova. Charlie, have you seen the new Discmania ad for the P2s with the alpacas?
I've like heard about it and I've seen it, but I've always got it muted or something during the ad breaks, so I haven't heard it.
You've got to watch it because UC is talking about like how great alpacas are and how you need to take Omega in order to like keep your blood pressure low when you're missing putts. But then he's like, but in terms of disc golf, you need the P2. It's just the premier putter of disc golf. It takes those discs that were considered everyone's P2 replacements and
directly goes head on at it.
It goes head on and says you cannot mimic what we do. I think that it shows a little bit of the weight that Discmania held and lost and is now fighting to reclaim, and are able to do so thanks to that separation. And I think it was a critical turning point for Discmania as a company and as a brand. I just advocated a little bit for it, but big deal.
Give us the 10 seed.
Yeah, the 10 seed, Adam Hammes has 2 Elite Series wins. This one we talked a little bit about in terms of new faces, but Adam Hammes winning one on the National Tour and the Elite Tour, or Pro Tour, 2 Elite Series events, I think really cements himself as an elite player. So, Charlie, which one do you think?
Yeah, heck of a season for Hammes. A lot of players don't even have a single Pro Tour win. Some of the players we talk about, like, wow, what a great season they're having. We just talked to Andrew Marweed. Andrew Marweed doesn't have an Elite Series win. Adam Hammes has a pair. There's not a lot of guys out there that get a pair in a single season. So that's a big deal. And, I think kudos to Adam Hammes for making the list and getting the 10 seed. But he's not going to win against this, what is like for sure the biggest business news, sort of like in the industry, which is Discmania, getting a new manufacturing partner in Latitude 64, or I guess expanding their manufacturing partnership and, going all in on their own production. I think this is a bigger deal than people realize. Discmania is huge in Europe. They're the biggest company in Europe. And I think they have the potential to become one of the biggest companies in the entire sport. I think right now they're behind. They're definitely behind Innova. They're definitely behind Discraft. Maybe they're also behind, if we want to just call it broadly, Trilogy. It's hard to know. We don't have these stats, but I think Discmania has, enormous potential because of the smart marketing. And they've done a great job of building the hype around their brand. So I'm with you. I think Discmania going its own way is pretty big news.
Final matchup, Charlie.
Well, here, you knew it was coming. Maybe it should have been the 1 seed, but it's the 2 seed. James Conrad's shot heard around the world on the 18th, 72nd hole, or no, 90th hole of the World Championships, forcing a playoff with Paul McBeth and then winning in the playoff, but throwing it in from 250 feet with the Envy. Incredible moment, unforgettable moment. I'm like, wow, I was there for that. That was insane. And it's going up against the 15th seed, the heavy underdog. New formats joining the tour. We had the Disc Golf Pro Tour All-Star event to start the season. We just had this match play event. We have the announcement of next year's Champions Cup, where we're going to have 4 rounds of stroke play and then match play as a major, which that is going to be bizarre. Anyway, so new formats, kind of like new ways to watch disc golf going up against James Conrad's greatest shot in disc golf history.
I think new formats has some, and the reason it's probably not the 16 seed is because the fact that it has a major. right? If it didn't have a major, if it was just all-stars and match play, I think this is probably the 16 seed. The fact that it's a major is significant. I'm going to throw your logic right back at you, though. The Champions Cup is an announcement. We have not seen how it has played out yet. I think there's a greater potential for disaster in the Champions Cup than there is in the European Pro Tour. This event could be terrible, depending on the execution and the format and how it goes. This event could be maybe a train wreck is a little too harsh, but I'm going into this.
Emerson Keith, finished 25 strokes back of Ricky Wysocki, but managed to get into the 4th spot. Let's go to match play to determine who wins.
I'm going in with zero expectations, zero hopes. I'm just going to watch golf and take it in. James Conrad's shot is... It was big. It was big. It got a lot of publicity. It got a lot of eyes on the sport. It got a lot of internal ground that I think, it's the winner. Sorry, Champions Cup.
Sorry, new formats. You did your best. All right. Well, we're on to the Elite 8. Now the question is, and I think I know the answer already. We're going to wait and we're going to finish up the bracket on Thursday show. So we've got our Elite 8. Here are the matchups. You can think about them. You can stew on them, and we'll finish the bracket and we'll pick our winner on the Thursday show. It's Macbeth $10 million contract versus Katrina Allen winning Worlds. Return of spectators versus new faces emerging on tour. DGN hitting 25,000 subscribers versus PDGA membership at all-time highs. And James Conrad's shot versus Discmania leaving Innova. So we'll leave it there. We'll let you think about it. We're going to think about it ourselves, and we'll be back with you on Thursday to close up the bracket and pick our 2021 Stories Match Play champion. That's going to do it for today's show. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you on Thursday right here on The Upshot.